Yo, what is up everyone? Back here with another video. Today we're going to be doing a video reviewing the most recent Desafio Latam Penguin Fundraiser Cup tournament. Just so you guys know, as a precursor to this video, I do want to point out that this tournament was hosted specifically for a content creator slash VGC player called Mr. Penguin, pretty much raising money for his mom who was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I'm going to have the GoFundMe link down below if you guys would like to donate to that cause. That is the main reason of why this tournament was made, just to support that. So I want to make sure that I'm also doing my part to spread the word. So just to start, that's obviously what this tournament was for. That'll be linked in the description if you guys are interested in maybe even helping them out a little bit. But yeah. So I wanted to go over the metagame for this specific tournament because this is pretty much the biggest tournament we've had since the most recent Limitless tournament. So pretty good tournament to review as a whole and kind of go over. So we're going to be looking through the stats. We're going to be looking at the teams that perform the best versus the teams that perform the worst and just kind of going from there and seeing, what we like the best, kind of overall what worked the best. And then, yeah. So first off to note, we're going to look at the metagame before we look at the individual teams. So look at the individual teams. It is worth noting that Kyogreization and Yveltalzation are still running this format in terms of being popular. Now, it is also worth noting that Palkiazation and Kyogre Solgaleo have become the second most popular restricteds. Pretty common in terms of like the general field, right? So this has been popping up a little bit more. And then from then down, like not too many archetypes. You see the standard Shadow Rider Calyrex, and then you see the Kyurem White Zacian stuff that's been kind of running around. Groudon Zacian still kind of underperforming, although this time it did get top 5. I definitely think it has some potential, but we haven't really seen it pop off yet. But we've seen like a few people do well with it, so I feel like it's something that once people find the team for it, it'll be a lot more popular. But as we know, Kyogreization kind of still running the format here. So first I want to go through all the Kyogreization teams that place well, the highest placing one being Maxties. Maxie is a very interesting player. So he always chooses to run Pikachu on his teams. So, like obviously like there's a Pikachu on this team. I mean, hey, you did pretty well with it, right? I mean, you got like to top 3. Pikachu has like a really neat G-Max move called Volt Crash, which basically paralyzes both opposing Pokemon on the field. It's actually pretty annoying to deal with if you're on the opponent's end. Obviously, if you have something like double ground types, it's a little bit more doable. But it's still like scary, right? Because you can get paralyzed. What's really interesting is the Specs Kyogre. This isn't an item you see too much on Kyogre, and I guess like the concept is like you can go for stuff like Volt Crash and then have like the Kyogre come in, and because everything's paralyzed, you outspeed and just go for like Water Spout. And like same with like the Talonflame, right? Like you just Tailwind and Water Spout comes out, or like you go for a Quick Guard and like Water Spout. So like there's a lot to allow the Kyogre to get off Water Spouts on this team, which is kind of interesting. It seems that the Dynamax is mostly focused around the Landorus and the Pikachus, so that's also kind of a neat thing as well. It's kind of interesting, right? I mean, typically we don't see Pikachu around. Also, it's worth noting actually, Volt Crash ignores typings, so I'm pretty sure it actually paralyzes electric types and it paralyzes ground types as well. I'm not 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So yeah. I mean, pretty crazy, I guess, run overall, It was actually a really cool team, I think, that made it kind of far, right? I was kind of surprised to see it go far, but, obviously if you play up to standard and, like, the team has some tools, you can definitely take advantage of it, right? Going back to the Kyogreization teams, the 4th place team as well is actually just a standard version of Kyogre. This one utilizing Amoonguss. We've pretty much seen, like, this team a lot, just the difference is pretty much between Amoonguss and Venusaur in terms of the last slot. Also, the Zapdos either runs Eerie Impulse or it runs like the Life Orb set, right? Like those are the variations you see. Interesting enough, this Kyogre also had a Assault, so another Assault Kyogre kind of making it in a deep run in the tournament, right? I find it really interesting. I feel like at this point, it's like Zacian Ogre is just cursed to lose. Because like, if you look, right, every time there's been a Zacian Ogre in contention, and it has always lost, right? Like, every single time Zacian Ogre will lose in top 4. I don't know why, because, like, it's a really strong archetype. I feel like eventually it's going to get a win, but, like, yeah, it's been struggling, man. Like, it'll, like, get, like, really far, and they'll just lose in the last, like, stretch, right? Anyways, back to the Kyogreization teams. The next team, obviously, that got 7th place was actually, an Italian as well. This is a pretty standard version, I'd say, of the, Zacian Ogre archetype with screens. The only difference is this one's using Seismitoad, and it forgoes the grass type, right? Which is kind of an interesting variation. Excuse me. And also to the Zapdos is running like the bulky Eerie Impulse Roost set. Also interesting note, running Thunder and Hurricane, right? So it can like use stronger like electric and flying. Oh my god, excuse me guys. I'm like sneezing like crazy. But yeah, really interesting, I guess, variation to team. Also, Focus Sash, No Bulk Incineroar is really interesting. It's mostly probably just because it lets you live in front of stuff like Kyurem and other annoying Pokemon like that, right? And not get one shot. Even versus opposing Kyogre, you won't get one shot, so that's nice. Next up, Liziato. This is the version that won the first, or one of the first Series 12 tournaments. Pretty much using Life Orb Kingdra, kind of getting offense that way. It's interesting because I didn't really expect this team to be that good besides the first tournament, but it seems to be like popping up once in a while and doing okay. I mean, this is the first time I've seen it go a little bit farther. Something worth noting too is this tournament didn't have as much participation, you know what I mean, in terms of like a ton of teams, and the only teams shown are the top cut teams, by the way. The other teams aren't necessarily shown. Actually, hold on, let's see. Oh yeah, sorry. This is just the Zacian Ogre teams. I got confused. And then we go to Alan, right? Pretty much this is just a double weather version of, Zacian Ogre, which we haven't seen yet. I actually think this is really interesting. That being said, would I expect this version to do as well? I'm not too sure. It's kind of weird. Torko's like a weird in the middle Pokemon. Like in some regards, I guess it's kind of cool, but in other regards, it's kind of weird. Also, I'm not sure I like the Focus Sash on the Torkoal. I actually would much rather prefer it be Citrus Berry for like more long-standing bulk, but it is a very very interesting implementation of the team, right? And then as we continue down, this is where like these, the records don't really matter, so only these teams really matter. But 5 Zacian Ogre and Cut's not really that bad, right? I mean, that's a pretty decent cut margin. You see the win percentage is pretty high. Then we have Evoltalization. Ally was actually using my version of the Evoltalization team with a few changes, but for the most part, you can see it's pretty much the same, the same team, right? Like, I think the EVs were the only difference. Also worth noting too, like, I mean, this is the best performing Evoltalization, so I think the Rotom Heat Zacian is just like the strongest archetype of Evoltalization right now. 13th place. This one also cut was the same version, so you're kind of seeing like the same thing pop up again. You'll see that like this one had Lumberry. I really think Lumberry like sucks on this team. I don't think that you want Lumberry. I also think that you should be running Will-O-Wisp Nasty Plot on like this archetype specifically. With the Substitute Protect, I mean, Substitute's okay, but I think that Secret Sword also too is a bit better. Also, Protection's really bad. Please run Recover on this team. But yeah, I would say like this version is probably the best version right now of Evoltalization. I mean, it's just the most consistent, right? So not really too shocking there. Then we continue down. We go to the Palkiazations, right? The highest placing one is Aura Rayquaza. Looking at this, pretty much, we have the like Life Orb Palkia with offense. We have Focus Sash Gothitelle going for damage. You have Substitute Zacian. So kind of interesting here. No Incineroar or anything. Actually just running Ditto and Rillaboom. So seem to do pretty well here. The support Thunder is also kind of putting in some work. So interesting to see. I kind of expected the Thunders to be manual Rain Dance. So I'm kind of surprised to see it like not. But I guess it kind of makes sense depending on the team, right? But definitely an interesting team as a whole. Gothitelle is definitely something that's a little undervalued right now. I think this team did cut. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, this team cut, but it lost. This team ended up, doing okay with Palkia and Zacian. It has Spectre as well, which is kind of cool. But for the most part, I'd say it's kind of like your standard, Zacian Palkia team. 2 modes, Thunderous, nothing too crazy. Okay, going down, Solgaleo and Kyogre. So, Kyogre and Solgaleo, this is really interesting, right? Because, realistically, even though it had a bunch of usage, didn't really do that well. I mean, the best performance was 4-3, and that doesn't cut, right? So, kind of rough, I think this was a bad tournament for Solgaleo, Kyogre. I think the problem with the archetype is just you have to max really early, right? So, it's not super great. I think that can give it a lot of trouble. And then over here, finally, the team that won the tournament, Tabu's team. This was actually a pretty interesting team. I mean, it's using the Sash Calyrex that we've all know and love. It's actually using Gastrodon as well, which is really interesting. And it's opting for the more balanced mode of like Rillaboom, Gastro, Incin with like Shadow Rider, Zacian, and then Thundurus, right? So kind of interesting there. And then obviously we have Marcus as the follow-up, right? Marcus ended up going 5-3. I think that means they lost in cut. Yeah, they lost in cut because they went 5-2. They lost to Billa using Dialga and Zacian. And yeah, I mean, Shadow Rider, Landorus, Incin, pretty standard. Like, this looks pretty balanced, so not too surprised to see this team. But yep. So now we'll go to the actual standings so we can just look at the teams, because there's some archetypes that aren't worth talking about as an archetype, just more so looking at the teams, right? So first, obviously, we see Tabu get the win here. Tabu was using the Calyrex stuff that we just went over. Then we have second place being what's it called, Calyrex and Ogre, which I was very surprised about because I don't really think the archetype is too strong. One thing worth noting, this is offensive Regieleki, which probably does make a huge difference because you're able to deal a lot more damage. Also, the Calyrex is Seed Bomb, which also helps with its Gastrodon problem, right? So that makes sense there. Then over here, we look at Max D's team. Max D's, obviously, we took a look at this. Pretty much just offense with the Kyogre. Very centered, a very, very offensive team as a whole, right? Then, fourth place, standard, Zacian Ogre. Crazy Mix has done well with this team twice in a row now. It's really interesting to see this team, right? Also, too, one thing worth noting is there's only one Protect on the team, I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah. Literally only Protect on Zacian. Nothing else has Protect on it. So, very hyper-offensive team. So, kind of interesting to see that. But, it's been working. So, I mean, fair play, right? We already went over Rayquaza's team. We already went over this team. Then we get into the more interesting teams in the, I guess, top 16, right? I mean, we've already been over this. This is kind of a variation on the standard Calyrex Groudon stuff. Then you go here, Double Weather. Kyurem White and Zacian, I mean, one placement in top 16, not too surprised. I mean, Kyurem typically gets in, like, top 16s and then loses. So, I mean, maybe one day I'll go farther. I mean, Whimsicott, like, Zacian Kyurem is, like, a very standard implementation of it, right? Like, it makes sense. And then you have Finny, obviously, to protect you from the dragon moves, but also weakens your own dragon moves, I guess. Then Double Intimidate, right? Like, pretty straightforward. Another version of Zacian Gastro, worse Zacian Gastro, in my opinion. Then you have Calyrex and Kyogre with Regieleki, Whimsicott, Regigigas, Weezing. I mean, that's okay. I feel like you're kind of just saying, like, I'm just going to attack every single turn. And, like, I hope you don't know how to deal with it, almost. And then we have Ink's team. Ink was using Zerndon. From what I heard, it wasn't really that great. I think it was just a player diff thing, I'm kind of convinced it might be the same thing with the Zacian. I'm not too sure. But, yeah, we'll have to see, right? Like, it is interesting, though, that Xerneas keeps popping up randomly in these tournaments and doing okay. You know what I mean? Like, I think Xerneas itself actually has some potential. It's, like, okay. I think you can kind of see that. As we go down, I feel like these teams aren't worth mentioning too much. I mean, this is literally just a more balanced version of my opponent in finals of Limitless. And then this is, obviously the Zacian Palkia. And then the standard, Groudon Calyrex team with, like, Charizard. So, really interesting to see. I think overall these stats really point out that Swordfish is still really common. Maybe Calyrex Ogre has some potential. But I think Calyrex Shadow and Zacian has definitely established itself as, like, one of the better archetypes, and I think it actually has a lot more exploration and, like, things you can do with it. So I'm really interested to see, like, where it goes from here, right? But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I mean, it was nice to go over the metagame and kind of get a look at another tournament. But yeah, no, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you guys would like to support me, obviously beyond the YouTube, please make sure to check out the Patreon or sign up for coaching where I can help you improve your VGC skills. But thank you guys so much, as always, for the support, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.